I'm Casey Kasem. It was back in 1956 that comedian Dickie Goodman, along with his partner Bill Buchanan, released a novelty single that was unique at the time. It was called The Flying Saucer, and it used a technique that Dickie Goodman called break-ins. Break-ins were snippets taken from hit records at the time. In this case, they were used as quotes in a fictitious news report about an invasion from Mars. Way back in the early years of the rock era, that single sounded like this.
Take it away, John Cameron.
This is John Cameron downtown. Pardon me, madam. Would you tell our audience what would you do if the saucer were to land?
Duck back in the alley.
Thank you. And now the thin gentleman there.
What I'm gonna do is hard to tell.
The gentleman with the guitar. What would you do, sir?
We'll just take a walk down the lonely street.
Thank you. We return you now.
That comedy record became a top 5 hit, and it inspired hit sequels, Flying Saucer the Second and Santa and the Satellites. It also established Dickie Goodman as one of the top novelty acts of the early rock era. In fact, he's in the Guinness Book of World Records as the artist with the most novelty chart records. He had 17. Including his 1975 hit called Mr. Jaws, a song about a shark with a taste for the Bee Gees. That's our story of the man known as the granddaddy of electronic mixing, Dickie Goodman.
We are not going to interrupt this record.
Yes, we are.
Hello, my name is Michael, and I obsess. I come across something that grabs me and I consume until I can't take anymore, and then I'm on to the next. Some obsessions last a week, others a lifetime. It is my intention to explore these obsessions with you as they occur while the passion is hot. Welcome to Eclectic Obsessions. It had to have been hearing Mr. Jaws on the Dr. Demento show. It certainly wasn't the frequent airings of Harry's Jockstrap. Something about the concept of breaking into an interview format with song excerpts as the answer delighted me to no end. It wasn't hard to find a collection of these, and I quickly was hooked. We will be exploring the work of Dickie Goodman on this episode of Eclectic Obsessions. Dickie Goodman was an American music and record producer born in Brooklyn, New York. He is best known for inventing and using the technique of the break-in, an early precursor to sampling that used brief clips of popular records and songs to answer comedic questions posed by voice actors on his novelty records. In the middle of 1956, two struggling songwriters named Bill Buchanan and Dickie Goodman created something that would finally put them on the map, but not as songwriters. They decided to create a novelty record by writing a fake newscast about an alien invasion from outer space, essentially a 4-minute rewrite of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio show. But while they would be the reporters asking the questions, the answers would be provided by musical snippets from popular records of the day. After a lot of shopping around and rejections, they finally created their own label and released The Flying Saucer. Surprisingly, the record was a big hit, making it all the way to number 3 on the Billboard chart and hitting the top of the charts in some local markets. Unsurprisingly, there were numerous lawsuits once the record became a hit. Most of the record labels that had a sample on The Flying Saucer sued Buchanan and Goodman for copyright infringement. In the end, it was decided that the record was a new work in the form of satire and wasn't infringing on anyone's copyright. His influence on pop culture is far more dramatic than people know, says Dickie's son John Goodman. Just the mere fact that his first record used the original artists rather than socially acceptable cover versions was huge. Stations that would not play race music in the 50s were forced to play Elvis and Little Richard rather than the Pat Boone versions of popular songs because listeners called in to request those songs after hearing them on the Flying Saucer. Buchanan and Goodman followed up with 5 other records. Buchanan and Goodman on Trial in 1956, Banana Boat Story, in which the duo used a single song, the Terriers' Banana Boat Song, as a break-in spoof of broadcast commercials. Flying Saucer II in 1957, The Creature from a Science Fiction Movie by Buchanan and Ansel in 1957, and Santa and the Satellite Parts 1 and 2 in 1957. With Mickey Shore in 1959, Goodman recorded 2 singles under the names Spencer and Spencer, both of which relied on much less sampling and more on sketch comedy. Russian Bandstand was a reimagining of the then-popular TV series American Bandstand, set in a totalitarian Soviet Union. Stagger Lawrence imposed Lloyd Price's recording of Stagger Lee onto a spoof of the Lawrence Welk Show, borrowing heavily from an earlier Welk parody done by Stan Freberg. Neither recording was sure would be as popular as the recordings Goodman made with Buchanan. Starting in 1961, Goodman released his pieces as a solo artist. He scored 3 Billboard Hot 100 hits based on the hit TV series The Untouchables. The Touchables in Brooklyn, and Santa and the Touchables. In 1962, Goodman spoofed Ben Casey with Ben Crazy. In 1966, his spoof of Batman resulted in Batman and His Grandmother. During the late 1960s, Goodman recorded a mostly musical album featuring his wife, aptly entitled Dickie Goodman and His Wife Susan. Dickie sang one song on the record, Never Play Poker with a Man Named Doc or Eat at a Place Called Mom's, paraphrasing Nelson Algren's novel A Walk on the Wild Side, and produced 2 break-in style pieces, with Susan singing the rest of the songs. In 1969, Goodman parodied the political unrest on college campuses with On Campus, and the first moon landing with Luna Trip. Goodman himself spoofed political issues such as the Watergate scandal with Watergate in 1973, the 1973 energy crisis with Energy Crisis 74 in 1974, and Richard Nixon with Mr. President, also in 1974. Goodman failed to chart with a different version of Mr. President in 1981 after Ronald Reagan became president.
I forget exactly how it came about, but I remember when something like this, I think that all of a sudden we figured, gee, wouldn't it be funny if something started to be interrupted by reports of a flying saucer, and then a record came in telling the lines and back and forth. So I was with this other fellow at the time. We started to put it together, and it sounded a little bit funny to us. We weren't sure, and that was it. And every big company in the business turned us down, so we had to put it out ourselves. I go through all the songs, and I try to figure which lines might be funny or which lines might fit the situation. And, like in this thing, there are a few things, there were a couple of lines I know that stuck in my mind that came up first. And I just started to go through it, and before you know it, you have a story around it.
By 1975, the motion picture Jaws terrorized movie fans across America. Rainy Wednesday Records had folded, and Goodman was recording for Tiny Cash Records in Nutley, New Jersey. All anyone was talking about on the East Coast in the early part of the summer was, "Have you seen Jaws?" said Goodman in a Cashbox interview. I knew that here was a phenomenon perfectly suited for a track. While everyone else in the theater was going into panic and screaming, I was in hysterics laughing and writing down ideas and one-liners for The Shark. With his ideas in hand, Goodman assembled the necessary sound bites and purported questions for a new break-in record. Mr. Jaws took off like a torpedo, and Goodman and Cash Records quickly negotiated a deal with Private Stock Records to get his disc in stores. On November 6, 1975, while John Williams' theme from Jaws was floating at number 44 on the pop charts, Mr. Jaws, entering the chart at 49, was the highest debut single of the week. 5 weeks later, Mr. Jaws hit number 1 in Cashbox, number 1 in Record World, and number 4 in Billboard, who also ranked Mr. Jaws as the number 1 novelty song of the year. While Mr. Jaws put Goodman back on top of the charts and spurred sales of a greatest hits album, Mr. Jaws and Other Fables, some listeners couldn't believe that this was the same Dickie Goodman who flew a flying saucer into the airwaves in 1956. A few days ago, I was on a radio show, Goodman told New York Times reporter John Rockwell, and a little kid, he must have been 7 or 8 years old, called up and asked if it was my father who made the other records. I didn't know what to say. I finally said, sure, I'm following in his footsteps. I didn't want to say I'd been making these records since the mid-50s. Other movie tracks followed, like Kong, Starwarts, and Super Duper Man, as Goodman tried to recapture the formula that made Mr. Jaws a million-seller. In 1982, Goodman created a new sound collage, Hey E.T., satirizing the popular motion picture of the same name. But despite early positive response and solid airplay that would guarantee a hit as large as Mr. Jaws or The Flying Saucer, Goodman couldn't get the record in the stores on time. There was an urban legend that Steven Spielberg, the director of E.T., slapped Goodman with an injunction against selling the record. But Dickie's son John disputes that statement. It was a huge phenomenon on the radio, and he had just run out of financing to have the records manufactured and put in the stores. As a young kid, I heard my father screaming because the records weren't making it. A lot of the labels he worked for were fly-by-nights, and he had to get partners to acquire financing so the records could get pressed and shipped. He didn't have the luxury of signing with some major label and they'll pump $1 million into his records. He used to say the record business was all luck. Altogether, Goodman charted 17 hits, with 5 of them reaching the top 40. Goodman produced several other break-in records which garnered airplay and charted only in regional areas, usually Los Angeles and New York City, but a few other areas as well. What's really beautiful about Goodman's novelty records is that they're excellent time capsules of different eras. Pick up any of his records and you'll get an idea as to what was being played on the radio at the time. Also what was on the public's mind as well. Communism, the flying saucer craze, the moon landing, campus unrest, Watergate, and the energy crisis were just a few topics covered by both the evening news and Goodman's records. He also satirized television shows like Ben Casey, The Untouchables, Bonanza, Batman, and Happy Days, among others, and various movies including Superfly, Shaft, King Kong, Star Wars, and E.T. I highly recommend listening to whatever you can find by him in the break-in style. I have been obsessed with him for years. Thank you for listening to Eclectic Obsessions. If you like what you've heard, please download past episodes and subscribe on iTunes for future releases. You can follow the show on Facebook at Eclectic Obsessions, on Twitter at Eclectic Obsess1, on Instagram at Eclectic Obsessions Podcast, and on YouTube at Eclectic Obsessions. I'd love to hear what you think. Feel free to email the show at ecobpod@gmail.com. We'll be back in 1 month's time with a new Eclectic Obsession.
Super awful.
At this very moment, somewhere in outer space, the first Earth ship is landing on Mars.
Look at that.
Look at there. Look at that.
This is John Cameron, downtown Mars. Thousands of Martians have come out to greet the first Earth ship. Pardon me, sir. Would you care to say a few words?
Shut your mouth. Go away.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the Martian national anthem. Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, something seems to be happening. The giant frog monster is approaching. We can see the monster now. He's wearing
a white sport coat.
I think the monster is about to speak.
I wonder why nobody don't like me. Or is it the fact that I'm ugly?
There's only one person who can save these people now. Stepping out of the spaceship is Elf. How do you feel about this situation?
I'm a little mixed up on the field.
Do you think you can save Mars from the monster?
Yeah.
We return you now to Earth for a message from the President.
This is Washington. The President has a message.
I'm all shook up.
We switch you now to London.
This is Sir John Cameron, downtown London. The Prime Minister has just said,
I think I'm gonna cry.
We switch you now to Moscow.
This is John Cameronovich. We're here with the Russian Chief of Staff. Have you a few words?
We return you now to Mars.
This is John Cameron again, downtown Mars. Our hero has won. Wait, the monster is saying,
I feel like I could die.
Our hero is stepping back into the spaceship and is taking off.
You saved our planet, and now you're gone.
Now you go.
One more time.
Now you go.
We interrupt this record to bring you a special bulletin. Superfly is missing.
Good God!
We now take you to our on-the-spot reporter.
I have several witnesses here with me. Sir, when was the last time you saw Superfly?
It was the 3rd of September.
And you, sir, can you describe the suit Superfly was wearing?
Red, yellow, black, white, and brown.
And you, sir, who was the last person Superfly was seen with?
Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones.
If we need you for any further information, can we call you?
Whenever you call me, I'll be there.
We take you now to Washington.
We're here at the White House. The President has an important announcement regarding Superfly. Mr. President, what seems to be the problem?
I got ants in my pants and I need to dance.
Just arriving at the White House is the man that will risk his neck for brother man. Sheriff, now that the President has called you into the case, what will you be doing?
Chasing women and drinking.
Mr. President, what is your opinion of Sheriff?
This cat Chef is a bad.
Shut your mouth. I see the President and Sheriff have gone into the White House.
What they doing?
Mr. President, what are you and Sheriff doing in there?
Holding hands, making all kinds of plans.
Mr. President, why are you holding hands with Sheriff? I've just been handed a bulletin. Superfly was last seen
In Egypt and Israel too.
We take you back to our on-the-spot reporter.
I'm here with Freddie, who we believe knows the whereabouts of Superfly. Excuse me, Freddie.
Wait a minute. What happened?
Freddie's dead.
Freddie's dead?
That's what I said.
Oh, well, I have several other witnesses. Do you know where Superfly is?
We know, they know, and you know, and I know.
I don't know. How do you know?
Your best friend wrote and told me.
And just who is my best friend?
Superfly.
We are here on the beach where a giant shark has just eaten a girl swimmer. Well, Mr. Jaws, how was it?
Dynamite!
And what did she say when you grabbed her?
Please, Mr. Please.
I know sharks are stupid, but what did you think when you took that first bite?
How sweet it is.
Mr. Jaws, before you swim out to sea, have you anything else to say?
Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends?
With me now is the local sheriff. Sheriff Brody, the shark will be back for lunch. What do you intend to do? Just arriving is oceanographer Matt Hooper. Sir, if someone is attacked by a shark, what should they do?
Do the hustle!
We're going aboard the fishing boat of Captain Quint. Captain, will you be able to catch this giant shark? Thank you, Captain. Captain, when you catch one of these sharks, what do you feel like?
Like a rhinestone cowboy.
We've just sighted the shark again. He's coming straight for us. Captain Quint is shouting something at him.
Get your baby one of these nights.
Hey, Jaws, the captain says he's going to catch you. What do you think of that? Uh-oh, here he comes again. They've hit him. Mr. Jaws, why doesn't anything seem to hurt you?
Big boy, stand quiet. Big boy, stand quiet.
He's coming right onto the boat. Mr. Jaws, why are you grabbing my hand?
Wouldn't you give your hand to a friend?
No, wait! Mr. Jaws! That's not the way this record is supposed to end! Help! Help! We are here at the White House for a special report on the energy crisis. Mr. President, have you any statement?
Leave me alone, just leave me alone.
Mr. President, what really caused the energy crisis?
Smoking in the boys' room.
During the crisis, how much gas will motorists be allowed?
Just enough for the city.
Who do you believe the gas shortage will affect most? Mr. President, the crisis must be solved. What do you intend to do?
Keep on playing those mind games.
With me now is the head of the Federal Energy Office. Sir, you hold an important position. What are your qualifications?
I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight talker.
Mr. President, have you anything to add?
Leave me alone, just leave me alone.
We have a long-distance call from Saudi Arabia. King Faisal, is that you?
Hello, it's me.
King Faisal, what are your thoughts when you look out at all those oil wells?
You're beautiful, and you're mine, oh my.
I have Golda Meir of Israel on the other phone. What should I tell her?
Won't you tell her that I love her?
Mr. President, have you any added comment?
Leave me alone, just leave me alone.
We'd like to continue this record on the energy crisis,
but we have just run out of energy.